How you doing, guys? Hyperwave Gaming again. This is Sin City Quinn, and we're back after the weekend seeing Venom. We did a kind of a first impression or a before we watch video on, was it Friday or Thursday?
On Thursday, but we posted it on Friday afterwards.
So we're just coming back after the weekend, seeing it with our impressions of it, and I can tell you mine changed, and that's why I think that it was very interesting to go back and listen to my comments in the last video after.
It was, yeah, because as I was editing it, I edited it like a day before I saw it, I think, or the morning before I saw it.
Yeah.
And yeah, my comments I feel like are still standard and still hold true. But I'm definitely interested to see what you're thinking, because if you enjoyed it, I did not, even in the least.
See, I'll go. I'll say this: it wasn't Infinity War.
I don't think either of us were going into it thinking it would be either. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
So it wasn't like the greatest movie I've ever seen. Maybe it's because I've had low expectations. So I came into it, and then when I watched it, I was like, hey, this actually ain't that bad. There were some things in there. Like, I felt like the movie could have been a lot better than what it was if they would have used the story better.
Yeah, I mean, even like getting just right off the bat, like that first sequence where they introduce the symbiotes and Venom and everything. That whole sequence, I feel, was just terrible.
Yeah.
Like a terrible introduction to something, and it was just... Yeah. I think that really showed it. That was the moment I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were watching it, and I turned to her. I was like, this is clearly not going to be a Marvel movie. Because it just has, like, nothing to what the origin of Venom is, really. Yeah. And it's just, like, this hamstrung kind of plot point.
Yeah.
That I feel like is present through the whole movie. That's the one thing that I don't like. Just, like, overall is, like, this is just another, like, sci-fi monster movie.
I agree with that.
You know what I mean? Like, it isn't anything super unique. You don't have that Marvel spin. You don't have that comic book spin, really. You have, like, a sci-fi spin, but, like, that's really it. You don't have the idea of, like, comic books.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, even that opening was really, really where at least I just checked out.
You were gone already.
I was like that. I think it was, like, 10 minutes of that opening, and I just checked out because I was like, this isn't... And then I was like, okay, well, maybe let me just watch it as, like, this is an enjoyable movie. But, like, the plot points and, like, some of the character motivations were just terrible.
They were.
At least in my opinion. Like, and I know it's, like, it's just a superhero movie. It doesn't need to be, like, Citizen Kane or anything like that. But it's also, it was just not good with some of the character stuff. And especially, I feel like Tom Hardy, I know you said you think he's a pretty good actor.
He saved the movie for me. He saved the movie for me.
I mean, he was, like, the only good thing, I guess. He did have funny parts. Like, I know many times we cracked up laughing when...
That elevator scene?
The elevator scene was great. When he's on the trolley and the Venom says food or whatever, or hungry. And he keeps saying that, like, throughout the movie. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. That's interesting. But I guess he was the best part. He was really the only interesting character.
He was.
And, like, even his motivation was kind of stupid. Like... I feel like the whole plot essentially revolves around, obviously this is like going to be all spoilers from here on out, but like the whole plot revolves around him essentially using his girlfriend's laptop and getting information for an interview for it, and then like that backfiring on him. But that seemed to be like an end of the world thing for him, when I feel like in the real world that wouldn't be.
Yeah, he had like a YouTube channel or something.
Yeah, he had like a YouTube channel, and then like they just tried to play it off as if like he stole his girlfriend's his fiance's like laptop for a little bit, pulled some sensitive information out of it, and like that's like the complete end of the world, and they both lost their job and blah blah blah. And I feel like it just seemed like such a like thin plot device to like motivate him to becoming Venom essentially, and to kickstart the whole movie off.
Yeah, and that's the one part that I still agree with what I was saying on Thursday. How do you bring that story full circle? How do you incorporate that story and then coming in there and making your own stuff? It's never going to be as good as the source material was.
No, and it clearly wasn't. I mean, I think we can both agree that it's not. I even went back and read the first Venom, like really big solo comic, Venom Lethal Protector.
Yeah.
And even in that, it is nowhere near what that is, but it's also just one of those things where it's not even like that great of a plot device, I guess, and not great of characters in my opinion. But just like overall, it's just like the pacing seemed really odd. Like it felt like a long movie at times, but then it felt like super fast. Like the ending.
Yeah.
My girlfriend turned to me, she's like, "We've only been here for like an hour and a half or something," and it was just like the ending was just like it felt so rushed at the very end.
Yeah.
And even the villain, which I mean, we had talked about how
Elon Musk type.
Yeah, and it was like this really terrible clone of Elon Musk, and his motivation seemed really odd. I'm not even understanding.
The world is ending and all that stuff.
Yeah, and like I know this is like a very big thing now in popular culture, and like even in like writing like fiction novels and all this kind of stuff. Like they're trying to incorporate all the stuff going on with like the politics in the world and like Trump and all that other kind of stuff. And I felt like they did that in this movie, and not to like a good effect. And they use it as like a crutch, I feel like, to essentially create drama.
Yeah.
And to make this like whole symbiote thing, which the whole symbiote thing didn't make any sense to me.
It didn't to me
because like at first it seemed like they only pair with certain people, and they seem to be very selective of who they pair with.
I know, yeah.
But then it like paired with his girlfriend almost immediately.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. So from my perspective, what I seen when I went back and thought about it later, because I was like, that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I think they were just using them just to like have sustenance. They were eating them just.
And and I guess that makes sense because it's like a symbiote, and they made the analogy to like a host and like a parasite kind of thing throughout the movie, and that kind of makes sense. But it's also like the Venom seemed to just like pick whoever he wants to, be a symbiote for, and like he picked his girlfriend, which that was like a cool, interesting scene when she was Venom and you saw her in like the moonlight and everything like that. That was really cool.
Because in the comic books, Venom has literally been everywhere. Like he jumped on everybody. So
yeah, and like that makes sense, and it's cool that they kind of played off of that. But the idea like that they jump around, but then they like kill certain people only, but not others, it just felt like it was like really poor writing on that. Where I was like, we set these rules up that the symbiote needs to follow for the main storyline, but like we aren't going to follow it for all like the B scenes, essentially, like the scenes that fill up the movie.
The poor people that they were having them feed off of.
Yeah, and like another thing,
they could have explained that better.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this on the way in today, where I was like, the main first scientist lady, she dies.
Yeah.
And she was working with Eddie for a while to figure out what the hell is going on. When she dies, does he even bring up that she's gone missing?
They never said anything about her again.
Yeah, like her whole storyline was like she's helping, figure all this stuff out that's happening at I can't even name the company. I don't even know what it's called.
Life or something like that?
Yeah, Life Foundation or something like that. But then she dies, and then it's just like, oh, this character's just dead. Like no one thinks about it. It's on any like anything really.
Then also, how did he get his job back at the end? He's going around as a symbiote biting people's heads off, but he got his job back. Like,
yeah, and it just seemed like, there's so much of that part of it. The whole like job thing and him like, this was the thing. I don't talk in movies. I'm a very big supporter of just shutting the fuck up during a movie. But I turned to my girlfriend in the middle of the movie when he's like climbing the building to try and like get the photos to his old boss that fired him. I'm like, does he not have email or something? Like, he breaks into this building.
That's a good point.
He breaks into this building to essentially, like, leave a burner cell phone with some photos on it.
Yeah.
And, like, it's for a news company. He can't just email them to the editor.
Or print them out or something.
Yeah, he could just mail them or anything like that. He had to, like, break into this building to get it. And I just thought that was probably one of the stupidest things where they couldn't even, like, maybe he just like goes to a post office or something. Yeah. It's like, no, he needs to like climb this building, so we have this like action scene with these cops. Which, I mean, the action seemed kind of cool at times until the ending, where I feel like they completely botched the ending of the movie, where Venom fights Riot, who's the main villain that we find out.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the character design for the two of them were too similar. Like, I was really struggling to figure out who was fighting who when they were, like, fighting around the spaceship.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work for me. Because, like, one's, like, this black silver, and Venom's, like, just this pure black.
Yeah.
It would have been cool if they introduced, like, Venom's, like, kind of, like, blue aesthetic that sometimes is visible in the comics, depending on who's drawing Venom. But the action scenes are okay. That ending fight scene I felt like was just useless. Like, you knew exactly what it was telling you.
Yeah, you knew who was gonna win.
Yeah, and like that was the worst part about the movie. That afterwards we were talking about it, like in the car on the drive home, and I was like, they just like spoon fed everything to you.
They did.
Like every little thing they gave you this long exposition of like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or like even like Venom's like very sudden change from I'm going to eat people's head to now I'm helping Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
Just seemed completely rushed.
Yeah, it did.
And it just made no sense in my opinion, because it was like, here's this like alien creature that's trying to kill everyone, and it's like, I'm with you now. And he's like, and then he used the bullshit thing of like, I'm also a loser on my planet. I'm like, oh great. Like,
yeah, for real. Like, I wonder why he said
like,
that.
That's like the only thing you could do to relate Eddie Brock's like fucking up his life to Venom's like, he's a loser on his planet that we get no background to.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I mean, there's other things I'm not a big fan of. The suit design looked kind of interesting. I thought it was a lot better than the suit we saw in Spider-Man 3. There were times when I felt like the suit didn't look very good. But it was more true to like the comic of like this huge like monster of a thing. It did seem odd that it was in San Francisco.
That's another thing too. I was like,
so that's what I thought too until I read that comic. And
he moved there at some point.
Yeah, multiple comics they kind of have Venom living in San Francisco because Spider-Man sort of kicks him out of New York. So like that kind of works. They even kind of reference it a little bit in the movie where Eddie Brock used to work in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we're all assuming that's like the Daily Bugle or something like that.
Yeah.
But that just seemed really odd. It also didn't feel like he was in San Francisco at times.
It didn't.
It just felt like this is generic city number 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like anything. They didn't utilize many of like the landmarks. I feel like they utilized the pyramid building that I can never think of the name of in San Francisco. But yeah, it just seemed like they set it in San Francisco so that they didn't have to deal with the issues of staying in New York and not having the Avengers essentially tower being there, being visible.
What the hell? I've never seen that before in Spider-Man. I've literally never seen it before. I was like, what the hell?
I guess you were like too slow to the like QuickTime event.
Yeah, I guess. Oh yeah, to everybody, I'm playing this game live. That's why I was concerned.
Yeah, Trey's been playing this. Yeah. Not me. I'm not able to talk as well.
Actually, I probably should give you the credit for playing this game because I'm playing it terribly right now.
Yeah.
It's Frank, not me.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I know you said you liked it. What were like the things you enjoyed about it? Because I think there was parts I enjoyed, but it was not enough for me to like want to view it again or recommend it. I feel like
I seen it from a perspective of I came into it with a low expectations.
Right.
So when I was sitting there watching it, I was like, okay. It was like a fun Saturday night movie where you don't have anything else to do and you just want to watch some shit.
Yeah.
Like it kept my interest at least. And I didn't think it was going to do that much, but it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. I did leave feeling like they could have done that character a lot better. Like I feel like they didn't do him justice. So even when they did the hint in the after credit scene when he's gonna go against Carnage in the next movie if it's another one, that kind of had me like I wish they would have done that first because it's kind of like they're thinking like, well, we don't want to blow our wad too fast, so let's start off with this character or this villain that nobody knows. But if they would have just came straight out with Carnage, like even how they set it up to where all of the symbiotes are coming at one time, Carnage can be one of them, and then he finds his way to Cletus Cassidy, and then that's the battle right there. I don't know.
So
I feel like too a lot of the reason why people love Venom so much is because he was a villain at first and he changed. Like the character was so beloved that the comic book writers actually changed him and made him into an anti-hero. So you miss a lot of that when you see this movie. You don't understand.
No, he's not an anti-hero. He's just a plain hero. He's like a dick hero.
In this movie.
In the movie, he is just a plain like asshole hero. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like he's just a hero that's kind of like a dick 9 times out of 10. Like maybe like that Hancock movie.
Yeah.
The Will Smith one where he's kind of like a dick through the movie. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's still a hero. They didn't focus too much on the anti-hero thing, which I was hoping. I feel like maybe could have saved the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have given it more depth and less of this like cookie cutter, which we were kind of expecting with Sony. Like it's going to be cookie cutter. It's not going to be groundbreaking. But you actually brought up a good point of why they didn't use Carnage for this initial villain.
Yeah.
And the director of Venom, because it did actually pretty well over the weekend. We'll get into that maybe in a little bit. But the director of Venom came out and said that the reason why they didn't include Carnage essentially was, this is a quote from Ruben Fleischer in an interview to IGN. He said, "We'd like to think that this movie will expand to other movies. The intention or ambition was to show that there are legs for the franchise in that a fan favorite, let alone played by Woody Harrelson, would be something we could look forward to in the future." So it was clearly like they were planning on Carnage being the future villain. And like we talked about in the last video where they're trying to build up a franchise. Yeah. And like that's what his statement's essentially saying that is like, we didn't want to blow the whole load at one time with Carnage and not be able to get the franchise that we want. Yeah. And boy, that car really beat the crap out of you.
It did. It didn't even
I've
hit
never
me the
seen
first
that
time.
before.
Like it was like nowhere near me.
Yeah. So like I kind of get it. The Carnage thing though, I was talking about that too, where So all the symbiotes are essentially gone. Are they going to do like that Transformer thing?
I'm assuming that's the only way.
You know what I
really
mean? Like it seems like like Venom got away and like Riot's dead, so like Riot's boss maybe Carnage is going to come back and like figure out what went wrong, and it feels like okay, now you're reusing like a Transformers plot almost, and like probably the Transformers reused it from somewhere else that I can't think of.
And the craziest thing is too, because in the comic books, and this is what I was afraid of, and this is exactly what Sony did. They changed a lot of the key parts about the character.
They had to,
and it was even with Venom though, because it was like, why not just stick to the source material? But even with Carnage and stuff like that, and the other symbiotes, they get stronger as they multiply. So Venom's offspring is stronger than he is,
right?
But now they got it to where it's a whole planet full of them, and
well, it's not even a planet; it's a comet. Remember, she said like they found a comet. They were looking for
like millions of them on there.
Yeah, it's like a whole species, and we kind of see that in the initial scenes where you see like that yellow symbiote and a couple other ones. Those are probably call-outs to some symbiotes I don't know about in the Spider-Man universe. But yeah, like the idea that there's this whole planet of symbiotes all of a sudden, and it makes no sense, and it clearly like kind of like it mimics or maybe just like shows you exactly what they're going to do in the next movie. Yeah, like there's only so many ways you can bring another symbiote to Earth that isn't already there. And you're right too. Like the backstory of like Venom's offspring being stronger than him, that I feel is interesting, and clearly it worked in the comics because they're still using parts of that even in the modern comics. Would have worked really well for a sequel to this movie. Yeah. But it seems like they're not going to do that. They're going to go the easiest route, which is there's a plan of these things, and at some point they're going to come back to figure out what happened to Riot, I guess. And
I think that's at the end of the day, because I write screenplays too, and at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of these producers or the executive producers, first off, it's too many cooks in the kitchen, but then they assume that everybody is stupid. And I think what makes a great film is when people can draw their own conclusions. If you have to spell out every single thing that's happening in the plot, in the trailer of the movie, or even in the movie, you're doing a disservice to letting people kind of discover it for themselves and be like, hey, okay, this is this and this is that. They really screwed that up, and they really dropped the ball because they had an excellent character that they just completely did not live up to the potential. It was a stupid action flick. It's like going to watch The Expendables or something like that, but it really didn't do that character justice.
And you're right too about the whole like spoon feeding. Like that's usually like rule 1 when you're writing stuff, which is like not to spoon feed and definitely not use as much exposition as they did in this movie. But it's definitely not to spoon feed your audience. Like they aren't dumb. We can put 2 and 2 together. It's not like this plot is that complex.
Yeah, exactly.
But for whatever reason, they did. They spoon fed it to you. And I think there were parts when they were doing that exposition where it was so clearly exposition. They didn't even try to hide it. It was just so clearly like Venom explaining exactly what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. Yeah. And this is exactly the reason why he's doing it and blah, blah, blah. And I don't feel like it works well for the movie. It makes it seem more and more like a real pieced together movie. The one thing that I do feel like we got maybe wrong was it looked like it was written by 3 people, a team, and then 1 person. I'm kind of curious if that 1 person's original script was even about Venom. And it wasn't
really, just like a Cloverfield type thing.
Yeah, like honestly, like when we got out of the movie, I was talking to my girlfriend. I was like, I really bet you this is a script from some other movie that never got made, and the 2 writers that were the team, the final writers that are credited, probably just pieced it together to be a Venom movie. Yeah. And that was like this movie. Okay, so. This is another part that I didn't like, and I really still, it kind of like irks me, is they stole a lot from other movies, in particular DC movies. So there's the one scene when he's in the back of the car and he's explaining to his ex-fiancée that sound waves in the MRI machine isn't good for him. But then the fiancée says, "Oh, so it's like your kryptonite." Yeah. Which then made me think like, why?
Why would you say
Why
that?
would you even include that? Like, it's also like now this is obviously something like nitpicky, like story wise, and just like it just like boils down to like what were the writers thinking? Where now you're saying Superman, like the comic books, exists now in this like Venom movie as like a piece of pop culture that everyone knows, and like that drew me out completely. Yeah. Because it was just one of those things where I was like, this isn't real. Like Venom, like this, none of this makes sense. Yeah. There was that scene.
That's a good point.
The other scene that they stole from a DC movie was, I think when he was on the bike and he was fleeing, he like grasps like part of a pole to like do this super tight right angle turn, and you see his like hand grab and he spins.
Yeah.
That's from one of the Tim Burton Batman movies. That's pretty like iconic.
Oh shit.
Yeah, like the Mythbusters even did an episode about it. Like if you could actually like do that tight of a
yeah.
And that's from I think it's from the Joker, the first Tim Burton Batman movie. I may be wrong. It might be from the Penguin one, but that's also from a DC movie. The one thing did you ever see Constantine with Keanu Reeves
years ago?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember. I really enjoyed that movie, so I remember way too much of it. But there's a scene where like it's almost exactly the same, where I think it almost opens where this like biblical thing gets found and it's being passed on from person to person as like this this almost like symbiote thing, and like as the person's walking around, you get a lot of shots of the person walking through different cities trying to get to New York, which is like what the story's about.
That was another thing too. Yeah.
That was exactly what this movie did. Yeah. Like they did the exact same thing where it's like this thing catches this one thing, and then it like keeps moving from city to city, and then it jumps on a plane, and then like just like, randomly finds the fucking guy at the Life Foundation.
How would it know that? Like, why would it?
Yeah, and
like since it crashed, that's where it was trying to go the whole time. Like,
and that's the one thing that, at least for the villain, I feel like was really weak. Was we got zero like backstory or motivation. We got motivation, I guess, saying that they want to take over the Earth and blah blah blah, but like that's pretty paper thin. But we got no backstory of like, why is Riot looking for this in particular? Why is Riot doing this? How does Riot know about this like ship thingy, whatever? There seems to be like some kind of like memory sharing though. When Venom paired with Eddie again, he got the memories back.
Yeah,
but like through almost the entire movie, I feel like through almost until the last 10 minutes. Riot is just this thing that keeps getting passed on from person to person who gives no line of dialogue.
Exactly.
Which I feel like at some point it'd be cool if they gave some line of dialogue, so we got
kind
something.
Of set it up to you so you know that this is a different, yeah.
But they didn't, and it was just like Riot showed up at the end, caused some bullshit, and it just works, I guess. But I don't feel like it does. The villain doesn't seem that interesting. It doesn't seem like it's that great of stakes either in the whole movie with Riot.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where Riot's going to take a spaceship and then come back at some future time to like bring other things. Like there's no risk to that. It's like, okay, well, we'll just figure that shit out when they get here or something.
Yeah.
And
that's one thing that I feel like Marvel has really spoiled us with. They really spoil us with the payoff. Yeah. And I think these other movies don't do that. They just rush to it, and it's like.
It is. And I think you're right on the whole payoff thing where through almost all the Marvel movies, even the early ones that weren't like the best, they did have that payoff, and they did have that buildup of, you know, we're going to do this piece is here, this piece is here, and like at the very end, it's all going to work together. Like in Iron Man 1 with Coulson, at the very beginning, we're just seeing bits and pieces of him, and then at the very, very end, he's part of the crew that helps Iron Man defeat the Ironmonger. So like that kind of pays off, but here we don't get any of that. No. We don't get any kind of like payoff between characters, this and that. And then like even, I know this is like a really like nitpicky thing, but even the idea that maybe this is in the comics and I don't know, and if it is, I apologize for this criticism, but like he's gonna try and get back with his ex-fiance who's already with someone.
Exactly.
And it seems like they're pretty serious about being together.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, are they trying to like cover that as like this is the anti-hero where he's not your like normal hero who like moves on?
Yeah.
And if so, it's like you could maybe pick something better than just like trying to get back with your ex and like sabotaging it.
And it felt like they were doing that on purpose, like they were trying to do it to be like edgy and different or something like that, but it just didn't work.
I don't feel like it. I don't know if it would have ever worked because it just seems like, oh, he's just a douchebag, which I guess gets back to like what Eddie really is at the end of the day. He isn't an anti-hero. He's just kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just felt really weird, that whole like back and forth between the two of them, and then they had that kiss, and then they like, it seems like at points she wants to get back together with Eddie, but is like too angry at him still, which is like a realistic thing with exes and everything like that. But it's also one of those things where it seems kind of odd. Why is she dating someone? Like, is she? It almost feels like they wrote her to be dating someone else just to have him be a doctor so that they can have that MRI scene and separate Venom and like do nothing else with it.
Yeah.
Because the doctor plays no roles.
Yeah.
She barely plays any roles at all. I feel like
forgettable character.
She's extremely forgettable. She's the second only female character I feel like in the whole movie. The first one being the scientist who dies. And they gave her like barely anything. She became Venom for a little while. She had that cool
had
scene.
to happen with the dog and all that.
Right, and the dog thing, like, once again, not following the rules of, like, I guess these symbiotes can just attach to anything. It attached to, what was it, like a pig or something? I don't remember what it first attached to in that. Maybe a hamster? I don't fucking remember.
Oh, that rabbit.
Rabbit, yeah, that's what it was. It was a rabbit. Yeah, just like, her whole thing, she could have been a really cool character, maybe, if they wrote it better, but... I feel like that's definitely one of those criticisms that you see a lot on the internet, maybe sometimes blown out of proportion, where the female characters in movies aren't given anything. I feel like in this movie in particular, she's given shit. Yeah. Like, she's given nothing.
Just there to be rescued.
Yeah, and, like, she's, like, halfway rescued, but also not, so it's like they half-ass that, too. Yeah. Like...
Because they didn't want to do that stereotype. They wanted to make her seem like she was this... She was there and had a reason and a purpose, but they completely failed.
Yeah, and it didn't work out, and it was just really odd. Her whole character the boyfriend character was odd too. The one thing I did really love and thought was really great was a Stan Lee cameo at the end.
Yeah.
It was kind of Stan Lee saying you guys should get back together.
Yeah.
Which, that's fine, but I think his cameo was pretty good. I was very surprised that his cameo was even in this. Because he didn't create Venom really, or any of the characters in this movie. Because I think that was Seth MacFarlane who did it. But I guess he's doing cameos for all movies now, which I didn't know. I thought he was only in the movies he like created the characters for.
Seth MacFarlane did.
Seth MacFarlane created Venom. Yeah, he created Venom when he was at Marvel before he left and became, in my opinion, a douchebag. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know Seth. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did that back in the '90s after Spider-Man kind of came back. Maybe he didn't create the Venom because the black suit was always around. He was the one who created like that big, huge Venom that we would recognize now.
Oh, okay.
I think someone else might have done like the black suit and who's credited, but he's the one who did like the Venom that we see in this movie, effectively, like this design and everything. And a lot of this story comes from the early Seth MacFarlane comics. But yeah, it was such an odd movie, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. Like,
yeah. That was my whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not as bad. It's definitely not an MCU movie, which sucks.
Yeah.
We knew it wasn't going to be, though.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'm not a big fan of, and it did make money. Apparently, it broke some October box office record, which, October has never really been much of a movie month.
Halloween movies and...
Yeah, and I don't think anything really big has been coming out even in the theaters.
Yeah.
Because we were actually debating if to even see Venom or just to see something else. But it did very well. Sony's, they're probably still figuring out what they want to do, if it did enough. I mean, they seem to have done zero marketing, so...
Yeah, really.
So it might actually have made money in the end, because they marketed it none at all.
I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah,
and we want to make sure we get this money back.
Right, and, that maybe that's a legitimate way to do this, but it looks like they're probably going to get a sequel, I'm going to assume. The movie will probably do really well on Blu-ray too after this reception that it's had now for the people who skip out on it, which obviously helps the revenue of the movie overall.
Yeah.
I guess it'll be cool to see Carnage. You know what I mean? Like, I really love
that's what
Woody.
I was excited about.
I really love Woody Harrelson. Yeah. I think he's great. He's great in almost every movie I've seen him in. I don't know if I think he's a great Carnage.
Carnage, yeah.
Because Carnage is like a serial killer and this and that. It'll be interesting. He always gives a good performance. I think his only bad one was maybe in Solo. I feel like it was pretty shit in Solo because he played.
Oh shit! I didn't know he was in Solo.
Yeah, did you not see Solo?
Oh, I didn't see that. That's the Star Wars one, right?
Yeah, the Star Wars one, the Han Solo, because he plays like Han Solo's like mentor essentially.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, it's a very odd thing that was also wasted. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see him. I guess as I read before, the director's thinking of this as a franchise. So I don't know. Maybe Sony will kick off their Sinister Six stuff maybe again and like do all the villains as their own movies.
But that's what I have. That's the same thing that happened with Suicide Squad. I think just as far as storytelling, and especially in this modern age, it's like there's something called the hero's journey.
Yeah.
You need opposition, and when you try to turn villains into heroes or to the main part of the story, to me, there's a certain way that you have to do that, and you have to make that a perspective-based thing to me. Because from my aspect as a writer, anytime that I do that, that story has to be written completely different. You can't just put a villain into the place of a hero and then say, yep, this is gonna be our anti-villain hero movie or whatever. Like,
you're adding actually. I don't think maybe Sony realizes that, or the two writers that rewrote it, or the original writer understood that. Where, as you were saying, like when you have a hero trying to be an anti-hero or a villain trying to be the hero, you add a lot of steps to your writing, your story, and structuring it, where you have a lot more work to do.
Yep.
And it's pretty clear in this movie they did not want to do the extra work. They want to do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And maybe it works out in the end. But I think you're right. Like in Suicide Squad, I think it failed too. They did those very, very thin, like Will Smith character and the other character, Harley Quinn's character. And I feel like they're going to do that probably with Carnage too, and with everything else. You know, it's maybe it'll change. And I just really wish Disney would be like, great, you guys did a great job. Let's do this together, maybe. Because I feel like the one thing this movie obviously was missing, it's pretty visual, is just like there's no Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And like it's really odd. It's very odd not to see the Spider-Man in this. And it works, I guess, at points, but at other points it's like, wow, this could have been cool if like Spider-Man showed up and tried to like stop Venom for a little while. Like, I feel like there's a middle section of this movie where like the cops are like the people against Venom. And that's so like throwaway, and like it doesn't create any risk. But if like Spider-Man showed up, that might be more interesting and like keep people interested for that middle half of the movie, which isn't always the interesting part. But they didn't do that, and I
feel like it had a lot of potential that it kind of missed out on because the way that they set it up. And some of the gripes that I had before watching it, like I said, they're still there. And they're adequate. It's just that I didn't think it was going to be as, I don't want to say as good as it was, but I thought it was going to be a lot worse. But like I said, at the same time, I still left the movie theater feeling like it could have been way more. And I'm looking at number 2, like maybe, but at the same time, like I said, it's Sony, and I just kind of I don't want to be disappointed again. Like,
I think like the best way to describe it is it's not as bad as Suicide Squad still.
Like
Suicide Squad still like the bare minimum of like. Yeah, it passed that. Like,
it's not as bad as Suicide Squad.
I didn't have to watch this in 4 different settings. Like I got through it all. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing special about. Maybe they'll listen to the criticisms. Depending on how much money they make, and they maybe will fold that into the storyline of the second one.
I doubt they will. They never do. I feel like companies like Marvel, they'll hear it.
I feel like there's a lot at stake for Sony not to fuck this up. You know what I mean? Like, they fucked up Spider-Man already once, you know, and they kind of got that taken away to some extent. They
Twice,
might,
actually.
and they might try and change it, and I don't know. It's so odd, and I feel like even the idea of like having Carnage be the second one was just so like predictable. And it's just one of those things where like, it'll be cool to see Carnage, but like,
is that really going to be
the trailers will make him look cool in general. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I don't need to see this in the movie theaters. I feel like maybe a lot of people will get that feeling after they see this movie where it's like, that was a Venom movie. There's probably not going to be much else built on this, you know. Eddie Brock's going to fuck up again. Carnage's going to somehow show up, and we'll move on. I don't know. And even his quote saying this is like a franchise of movies. It's like, I don't know if Venom really has enough back content to really make a whole franchise out of.
Me neither. That's
you know
what I mean. Especially without like, Spider-Man. Like,
and it's like, where are they going to allude, or where are they alluding to? You know, does Sony have some, grand plan for all this stuff? You
know what would be absolutely, probably, I don't know if it will make for a good movie, but it would be interesting. I just thought about it. If they had Spider-Man come in and Spider-Man was the villain from the perspective, because then you're telling the perspective story.
But it's like, okay, how do you do that? You know what I mean? Like, and obviously it's just
that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, like, if a good set of writers were like, okay, how do we make Spider-Man a villain, and like, how does
that perspective?
From the perspective of Venom or even Carnage or something, because it's one of those things where Spider-Man definitely needs to be in here in some fashion. It's odd without him in there.
Yeah, it is.
They really should just add him in some way. Even if it's something small, just add them in there so it makes sense.
Just like a hint or something like that. Because I feel like, especially with modern day storytelling, and maybe I'm just speaking from a writer's perspective, probably because I am, but I feel like the old hero, the thing that we see as the hero, I feel like that's gone. Like, it's not like that anymore because a hero has so many different sides. A hero to one person is a villain to somebody else.
Yeah, it's not good or bad. It's always like that gray area.
So like Game of Thrones is a perfect example. Like, there are no heroes and villains in that TV show. You got likable characters and you got the characters that you like. But I think besides like Jon Snow, Like he's the only one who's like a typical hero, but the rest of them are like what's her name? The Queen. Can't even think of her name right now.
I don't watch.
Not Daenerys. Oh, okay, yeah, but
no, I get what you're saying though. You're right, and like that would work for Venom. You know what I mean? Like from what you're describing, it's like maybe all these heroes don't have to be heroes. Maybe they can be something different. Maybe Venom can be something different, and it clearly works. Like Game of Thrones is very popular, and people are very very passionate about Game of Thrones and the characters in particular.
Yeah,
I don't think maybe people care about the plots, but I think at least in Game of Thrones, I feel like most people care about the characters.
Daenerys and
the families and everything like that. Like they care a lot about the character dynamics and everything.
Yeah, Jon Snow.
But I feel like we're just hoping here that Sony gives a shit. You know,
exactly.
What I mean?
That's at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. Because if they know that they can slap a Venom poster in the movie theater and people are going to see it, so they're like, all we got to do is get it to the point where it's done and it's presentable. And we don't give a fuck because people are going to see it and we're going to make our money back.
And that's why I brought up in our last video where they're doing kind of the same thing it seems like they're doing over with Star Wars. Where it's like, if you slap a Star Wars logo on it at some point or another, it's considered a Star Wars movie and people will go see it.
Yeah.
And that clearly didn't work with Solo. It made Disney kind of slow down a little bit. And I feel like Sony will probably have to learn this lesson again, even though they didn't learn it after the Sam Raimi movies, after the Andrew Garfield movies. So maybe they'll learn it again, or maybe they'll finally change. Like this is their third go around with a Spider-Man franchise, essentially. And it was a good movie. You know, if you want to just check out. I think my girlfriend said she checked out about 30 minutes in. I was like, this is just a movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not wrong. Like, it's just a movie. It's nothing special. I don't even know if you really need to see it in the movie theaters. I don't know if it was maybe the theater we went to.
I would Redbox it.
Yeah, I was about to say, because at least the theater we went to, I don't know if it was the speakers being kind of out of whack or what, but the audio seemed to be really mixed poorly.
Oh, was it?
At least, I don't know if it's our theater or maybe the copy of the movie itself.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so it's probably just our theater, but I don't think you need to see the movie. There's no big set pieces where it's like, holy shit, this looks amazing on this massive screen. Like, even the ending set piece with the spaceship, I don't feel like is that unique. At all.
And it was so predictable. You knew what was going to happen.
I mean, they spoon-fed to you through the whole goddamn movie.
Yeah.
You know, and it is, I think like Redbox, if you're a big Spider-Man fan, maybe buy it on Blu-ray. It's not... It's not worth like the money and the time that you have to go see at a movie theater.
It's
feel like
it really wasn't.
Which is sad because it's like it could have been cool, like we were talking about, and like different ideas that we had given out on the last video. But yeah, I would not recommend this. I don't think. To, even as someone who really loves Spider-Man like myself, I could not recommend it.
I would say if you're a comic book fan and you just want a weekend or a night where you could just watch a comic book movie, I would say go ahead and watch it. But obviously, you're going to remember. Not in the movie theaters, but obviously you're gonna remember how Venom was in the comic books. But it was just dumb entertainment. Yeah. Nothing more than that. It wasn't stop what you're doing, go see this right now. It wasn't.
No,
it wasn't Infinity War type. You're sitting on the edge of your seat the entire time.
It wasn't even like Captain America, Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
when the MCU really kicked into like high gear of like good movies. It wasn't even that. It was just like. This is like all the other Spider-Man movies, like
trying to set up a universe.
Terrible. Yeah, trying to set up a universe for the third time now, and you know it's good, and maybe like I'm hoping. I really do hope they listen to some of the criticism because it's definitely out there. You know, they made their money back, so focus on improving it, and maybe this can be a really interesting franchise that people invest into, and like it can be folded into the MCU at some point, maybe or something like that. But yeah, it's. Not as bad as I thought, but also equally not as good as I was predicting.
Yep.
So,
yeah, that sums it up right there.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to kind of think about it because it was not that bad, but
not that good either.
No.
So I give it like a 5 out of 10. I'd probably give it like a 5. It was like
I'd be around there like maybe a 4. I feel like the writing was really really bad, even for like a superhero movie from what we see now and experience with the MCU. So yeah, 4 or 5, definitely a rent. Definitely not a pay for movie tickets and going out.
Exactly.
Like, go
paying
see
$20
better.
for popcorn. Like
and what was worse was like I'm a big fan of going to the movies and I like collecting like the cups and shit. They had none of that for this movie. Once again, making me believe that they did no marketing or no anything to promote this movie because I was expecting they usually have like the heads like even for fucking Ant-Man and the Wasp, I got an Ant-Man head for popcorn. They didn't even have like a Venom head.
Yep.
It was just like, okay.
Wow. Yeah, they were just, let's get this movie out. Let's not spend too much on marketing. Let it just do what it's doing based on the character that everybody already knows, and let's just try to keep as much money as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it worked out for them. We'll probably hear in a little bit of what their actual revenue is probably over the next few days.
Didn't they get like 80 million or something?
I think it like made 80 million. I mean, obviously like the marketing,
domestic.
Yeah, the domestic. I don't even know if it's opened up overseas actually. The domestic sales obviously are not including marketing. That's usually like something analysts will sometimes predict. But from what I saw, like I highly doubt they did any marketing.
Yeah,
it's probably like maybe $1 million or $2 million.
I barely even like remember seeing any commercials. There was a couple of times where it came on YouTube, but like,
yeah,
that was about it.
It was bizarre, and I feel like a lot of movies in that caliber are trying to do that now, where they're trying to do bare minimum marketing. Hopefully, the first couple reviews make people want to see it, and that helps their overall. Because I mean, that's really what killed the Solo movie. Maybe we can talk about Star Wars in a different area, but it was just they spent so much on marketing. They had like Solo branded Solo cups.
Oh shit!
For the Han Solo movie, and like that movie just did nothing. Yeah, it was just so terrible. That they had to change their strategy a little bit.
Yeah, and I said Sony's still going to have to, because they're doing themselves a disservice by making it this way, because you kind of closed up the universe a little bit.
Yeah, you do.
By going to San Francisco, you close it up. And how is if you want to introduce Spider-Man at some point, how is that going to happen? If you want to introduce the Avengers at some point, how is that going to happen? Marvel was really good at doing that, and it doesn't seem like Sony is getting it at all.
Yeah, and maybe Sony is hoping not to. You know, maybe that's their plan, is to not try and fold this into the MCU. They obviously don't have the rights, so if they were to fold it in, they'd have to be paying themselves.
You would have to start all over again if they wanted to make Venom or something like that.
Yeah, which I mean, it sounds, and that's what it sounds like Disney's going to do with X-Men when they finally get it, is they're just going to reboot X-Men.
Yeah.
So that's probably what they'll have to do with Spider-Man if they do that again.
Yeah. I think that right there at the end of the day could be the downfall of all comic book movies. That fatigue. That you're going to experience from them resetting and doing over again and rebooting, and it's like, all right, we've seen this 7 times already, and now, that's why I was so glad Homecoming didn't do that. I don't want to see Uncle Ben die again. Like, I know Uncle Ben dies, we're good, we can pick up, because it was just recently done. It was like,
it was only a couple of years ago at that point. You bring up 2 good points. One is that the fatigue of superhero movies. I think Spielberg had come out probably like 2 years ago now. At this point, it was like
what's his name for the dude who made Avatar, right? What's his name?
That was James Cameron.
He came out and said something too.
Yeah, I know Spielberg came out and said like the superhero movies are going to become the next westerns, which essentially means they'll have their high and then they'll really just flat out die. Yeah, you know, you rarely get any westerns anymore, especially in the traditional sense.
I think the last one was like Django or some shit.
I don't even know if you would really consider Django. I was thinking maybe like old No Country for Old Men, maybe was more like westernish. Yeah. But yeah, maybe Django would be considered like, it does have a hero's journey. It was like a
spaghetti western. That's what they call it.
Yeah. But that, and then like also like you're saying, like the fatigue of restarting the universe is like that's clear in sales of comic books. You know what I mean? Comic books are constantly resetting their universes to try and get new audiences in, and it doesn't ever work. I feel like they get a small boost for their number ones, which are just the collectors trying to buy number ones in the hopes that they'll be expensive one day, and nothing really else. So you're probably right. In a couple years, I mean, it's actually very interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like the MCU itself is right now, after Infinity War Part 2, is going to have to do some kind of reset. Yeah. It seems like they have some pieces on the board already, like ready to go into play. Like Black Panther is set up. Spider-Man set up. The Captain Marvel's about to be set up in the next film. So it's going to be interesting how Marvel deals with that transition. Yeah. I don't know if you saw over the weekend, I think Chris Evans had tweeted like it's been a great time being Captain America, essentially alluding to him no longer being Captain America, which I feel like everyone's expecting him and Robert Downey Jr. to kind of fade into the background a little bit.
I could do without Chris Evans, even though I don't want to. But I like without Iron Man, so I think they're gonna set up Captain Marvel to be the leader.
And even in the comics, I don't know how much of the like more recent Marvel comics you've read, but even in the comics, essentially Captain Marvel's the lead of the Avengers. Yeah, and she, even in Civil War 2 in the comics, which was not that great of a story, she's the one who's fighting Tony. So they already have some built-in backstory for her to take the place of Captain America. Yeah. I feel like it is one of those things, and maybe we can talk about that in an MCU movie where we talk about Captain Marvel and like Infinity War Part 2, where it does seem like Captain Marvel will work to replace Captain America, but Iron Man, especially for the MCU, in the comics, Iron Man's important, but in the MCU, he was such a cornerstone to setting up that whole universe.
Yeah.
The only thing I've heard of was my girlfriend bringing up like Ironheart, who we talked about a little bit in the last one. Yeah. Maybe she takes the place of Iron Man, but you're dealing with so much built up like steps of having to try and build her up to be an interesting character.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure if moviegoers are going to be interested enough to give a shit about that.
It took us a long time to get onto Iron Man like that, and that's the only thing that I'm afraid of, because it's like The Walking Dead, which premiered last night.
Yeah.
It's like when you start killing off the wrong characters, or the wrong characters start disappearing or leaving for whatever reason, because Rick Grimes is leaving.
Isn't that the whole shtick now, I think? I don't watch Walking Dead, but I watch all the trailers and all that bullshit. Isn't this like Rick's last season or something? Or last couple episodes?
He's leaving because he's just tired of doing it, because they killed off, first off, they killed off Glenn. Then they killed off Chandler Riggs' character. I can't even think of his name right now. I'm blanking on his name. His son, Carl. They killed off Carl.
Oh, really?
And then it's like, who you're killing off all the good characters that everybody loves, and you expect people to sit here and keep watching the movie.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting to see if people still stay interested after Tony Stark is gone and after Captain America is gone, and see if they can actually keep everything together and keep people interested, because those are two very important characters, mainly Robert Downey Jr., because he'll forever be Iron Man now.
Yeah, essentially, like he'll be Iron Man and maybe Sherlock Holmes if they do another one. But yeah, he's definitely always going to be Iron Man. So, maybe we should save this talk though for MCU video, because I feel like this would be interesting to talk about, like maybe where the MCU goes from where they are now, and like the stuff we know about with Captain Marvel coming out, and even Infinity War Part 2, some of the leaks we've been hearing. But yeah, I feel like just wrapping up the whole Venom thing is just, it's not that bad, but it's also not that great. You know, it's
perfect.
Just wait for the DVD to come out or for Redbox and just watch it on that, because you're not missing anything. There's no groundbreaking cool things. The effects are interesting but not amazing.
You'll love it that one night when you have nothing to do.
And you can make your own popcorn that doesn't cost $20.
Exactly. And just go out there and enjoy it with whoever. You'll thank us later.
So I think that's it. We'll probably do another video hopefully this week about maybe the MCU or something else. But yeah, so that was our thoughts on Venom after seeing it. So we will see you guys later.
Peace.